I know it feels like you've lost them, but if you think about it, they were benefiting from you being the way that you were with them, as in they were benefiting from you being so loving, so giving, so open. They were benefiting from the way that you threw your heart into that relationship. They might not have felt able to meet you there because of their capacity, but they were still benefiting from all the love that you were pouring into the relationship. And so when that goes, when somebody actually starts healing and moving on, that noise that they felt like was background noise, that they were not taking seriously, they weren't noticing as something valuable, important, and something they needed to cherish and respect in the moment, suddenly that noise becomes really loud. They lost you. They lost a lot more than you did, because if you think about it, how much were you really getting from a relationship with someone who couldn't meet you? How much were you really getting from a relationship with somebody who couldn't have difficult conversations? How much were you really benefiting yourself from someone who was not even meeting you halfway? They've lost you. They've lost that opportunity to be with somebody who was so willing to do the work. You tried. And as soon as you start having expectations like accountability, which is perfectly reasonable for a healthy relationship, they can't handle it. So they lose all of the other brilliant, amazing, loving things that you were offering them. They lost you. If you can flip it around like this, it completely changes your state, right? Because this was a real moment for me in my own journey when I was so anxious about, working out how I needed to be around this person, trying to make myself calmer, trying to make myself less anxious, trying to make myself cooler or whatever. And I suddenly looked at this person one day and I thought, you're the one that's pretending. You're the one that's putting on an act here. You're the one who can't sit with me in discomfort. You're the one who can't meet me, you know? And actually, they lose us. Like avoidance lose us, essentially. Avoidance lose the partners that were so willing to make a relationship work. Avoidance really, really struggle later when they realize that that's what they lost. When they realize, oh God, I've messed up and sabotaged all of my relationships, which is what they do. When they don't want to work on themselves. I'm not saying they'll do this forever and ever and ever, but as long as they're not working on themselves and avoiding things and avoiding things and avoiding things and not having difficult conversations and not letting that part of their ego die, yeah, and identifying with, this is just the way it is, this is just the way I am, you're too sensitive, and all of that kind of stuff, they keep doing that. And when they realize, oh, I'm the common denominator here, that's when they look back and they fall apart at all of the ways they have destroyed other relationships and people's hearts. It's like that song, who do you think you are, going around breaking hearts, or something like that. Can't remember what it is. Collecting your jar of hearts. That's kind of what they do. And they don't realize they're doing it. They don't really want to do it. I've got a lot of avoidant clients who think, I don't know why I do that. Don't know why I do that. And I wish I couldn't. I wish I wouldn't, do that. But it's their nervous system. It's their capacity. It's so difficult for them to sit with discomfort. But remember that when you're thinking, I've lost the love of my life because they couldn't do it, actually, what did you lose? You were struggling with them. You were struggling to feel okay in that relationship. You were anxious, constantly striving, losing yourself more and more all the time when they require you to adjust to them so much. It's just probably a pattern that you're used to from your childhood. And that's the pattern that we've got to break. And, it's all well and good focusing on the avoidant and what they can do and what they need to know, but that's useless to you, because it's information, and information is, can be regulating sometimes. But what you need to do is know your own nervous system, know your own values, know your own needs, so that you can spot these things much earlier and stay regulated and stay in connection with yourself when these things happen, so that you don't lose yourself for the sake of someone who cannot meet you, right? And that you can still stay in touch with your own inherent worth, value, and love within you that you have to give to someone who is willing to see you and meet you and be there with you and actually choose you. You know, a relationship is a two-way system, right? It cannot work with one person doing all of the heavy lifting. And if you really think about it, what you've lost is a really uncomfortable situation, and that's a benefit to you. You have lost the stress of trying to figure out their brain. You've lost the stress of them not replying. You've lost the stress of maybe accidentally upsetting them somehow. You've lost the stress of tiptoeing around them. That is all a benefit to you. They have lost someone absolutely devoted to them. They have lost someone absolutely willing to go to therapy, to do the work. They've lost someone who loved them, who saw them at their worst and still wanted to be with them. That's what they've lost, right? And they feel that later. They feel it when the noise turns off and they notice that your energy has changed. They notice that they don't get that anymore. You know, people, like I say, benefit from us having weak boundaries. And when we actually start asking for what we need and accountability, then it means that, you know, they have to take responsibility there, or else they lose all the good stuff too, you know? And that's the way it is, you know? It's not just all sunshine and rainbows in this kind of fantasy world where everything's just easy and okay all the time. Relationships are hard. And people need to be willing to go through the hard times in order to have the good times too. And that life is going to be up and down. There's going to be things that happen, and that you need a partner who can be with you in those hard times, not someone who makes it harder in those hard times, you know? So they've lost someone who was willing to be supportive, loving, caring, and you've lost somebody who was actually making it harder for you, you know, if you really think about it. So remember this when you're thinking that you've lost them, because I do also know the other side of this is that you had great times and that you're grieving what you thought it was going to be. You're grieving the way that it once felt. You're grieving the version of them where it seemed like they did have capacity. And I understand that. And that is part of the process in coming back to yourself, in letting yourself grieve what you thought it was. But coming back to yourself is going to be the most powerful healing thing that you can do. And it's also going to help you in the future to protect you from going through anything like this ever again. And this is what we're doing in the self-abandonment trap. We've got one space left. If you would like to join, we start on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. I would love to see you there.